Hi, welcome to Writing Wednesday. I'm Janet Fitch, and I'm a novelist, and I host this um, fireside talk, I guess you'd say, about all things writing. Answer your writing questions, psychological questions, craft questions, philosophical questions, whatever it is that you're interested in. Happy to answer your questions. So put them in the comments as we go along, and I will be happy to answer them. So yesterday we started, last week we started talking about portraits and the kind of material that goes into the portrait section of your notebook so that when you are writing, you can find more detail to describe your characters. That the writing notebook, this practice of observing and getting your impressions down, is strengthens the muscle um, to be able to describe your characters. I think it's a huge lack in much of contemporary literature is that people create wonderful characters and fascinating stories, and yet you can never really see the people because we are not looking at one another. People are very involved in the plots and the dialogue and other things, but it is very difficult for people now to look at people and describe them in words. We've become in the war of the between the picture and the word. The word needs to wake up and do its job. Uh, the writer is You're a writer, you're not a photographer. Um, and sometimes a picture is worth 1,000 words, but sometimes, you know, 250 words is worth any number of photographs because you're straining observation through your sensibility and really turning to the world. I think that we have turned away from the world um, a bit too much. And in description of people, you're looking for the salient characteristic, not just, what color hair they have or whatever that is, but things that tell you something. But unless you do the grunt work of actual bulk description, you don't get to the good stuff. You're left with um, people kind of swimming around in mid-ocean. You never see them. They emit dialogue, they don't have voices, they don't have gestures, they don't exist in the physical plane. So, as most of you know, I'm a great believer in the physical plane, and, I did something. Don't click on anything. I've always done this on Facebook Live, but I'm getting out of the Zuckerberg universe, so YouTube it is. And I do have a great number of videos that I've archived here on Janet Fitch's Writing Wednesday. So people who are not on those platforms can find them. So um, this is good. So today we talked in general about portraits last time, and I had some examples from my own notebooks, some of which range back to when I was learning to be a writer and really, putting in your 10,000 hours. I mean, that's um, my notebooks. I have exercises that have proved to be interesting. I always keep those. I have a section on portraits and a section on landscapes, and that's a whole notebook like this. And then I have a section on all the different senses in another notebook. So, light, texture, sound, taste, and scent. plus description of buildings, descriptions of I'm interested in cars. I live in LA, so sometimes what you see on the road is really interesting, and uh, all kinds of things. I'm interested in anecdotes, people's anecdotes. I keep them. I keep use my notebooks like crazy, and then I have a separate weather notebook that I really am a great proponent of describing the weather. You'll always have weather in your work, so you want to remember what January was like in July. It's hard to picture, but if you have a good weather notebook, you can go back and look, and it doesn't matter what year it is, it's April again, and what's happening in April. So that's the weather notebook, but today we're gonna talk about more about portraits. Now, I have been kind of off the news, a little bit, trying not to, walk into a tidal wave, but I decided to do some contemporary observation, and these new, say, the incoming administration, the now that they're having all of the hearings and stuff, I decided I would do um, some of the incoming figures that you're seeing. And so, what I've done for myself was go through the news, and now it's like, where did this guy come from, or woman? Where did they come from? Who's supporting them? What's their story? What's their bugaboos, et cetera, et cetera, for my own refreshing my own memory. Um, but then for the notebooks, it's straight description. So I thought, and then I printed it out. So I want to show you what that looks like. And this will go into portraits, my portraits portfolio, my portraits section of my notebooks. And you can see my notebooks over there. Let's see, this is the mirror image. Yeah, right there. So that's what my notebooks look like. They're big ring binders. So I will type these notes on my observation of people, and then I will 3-hole punch and put them in the notebooks under portraits. So here's the first one. Here's how you do it. Okay. I was looking at J.D. Vance, and I know I looked up a lot of stuff about Mr. Vance, and but when I do the portraits, I'm looking at them. It's not about, hey, Jill, good to see you. Uh, it's not about what I know about him, but it's like, what am I observing? So I'll look at interviews with him, what he looks like when he's interviewing with somebody who agrees with him, what he looks like with somebody who doesn't agree with him, and looking at photographs of him in various contexts. So here's Mr. Vance, our new vice president. Okay, so plump face, full cheeks, blue eyes with brows pressing down on them. So brows pressing down on the eye. There is there's no space between the eye and the eyebrow. Now I do. Hi, it's Lagnu. I know. I'm trying to remember who Lagnu is. It's Sarah, right? Um, Uh, I am I love this book. I came across this book years and years ago. It's Chinese Secrets of the Face. So there is an art of of um, reading faces, Chinese art of reading faces, and you can call it in the category of reading the bumps on your head, or astrology or tarot cards or whatever. Um, but it's an ancient art, and often these ancient arts do have some basis in observation, like thousands of years of observation. So I don't discount it or elevate it, but it gives you some footholds of what to look for. how to, you know, how to look at a face and where to look and what to look at. And so I feel like, hi, Bosena, um, it gives you a some things to look for, and they have actual interpretations of what that means. So you can take it or leave it. But I look at this and I find it very interesting. You know, what does the face shape mean? What is when a person's eyebrows is like that? That means something in that system. And I like systems; they're kind of interesting, even if they're entirely made up. It's very interesting. I used to be married to an attorney prosecutor in a small town in Colorado, and he loved this to think about because jury selection. You know, when you're a prosecutor, what are you looking for? When you're defense, what are you looking for? And he actually did both. But he read this when he was doing prosecution, and sure enough, you're looking for certain things in a juror. You know, you want the sort of, I hate to say it, but you know, the prosecutors are looking for the hang 'em high people. So they're looking for a certain kind of intransigence, um, not the kind, you know, merciful thing, but you know, justice rather than mercy, right? So he was very interested in this book. I cannot recommend this enough to the writers. Secrets of the Face. Whether you believe, you know, that small eyes mean this, it doesn't really matter. It draws your attention and it gives you vocabulary to talk about faces. Now, the brows that press on the eyes, meaning there's no space. J.D. Vance has no space between his eyes and his eyebrows for them, unless he raises them. Um, and so in Chinese face reading, um, that is a sign of an impatient temperament, like Hitler had brows pressing on the eyes. It's like not listening very closely, just like, you know, get on with it, not interested in what you're having to say here. Um, and then he has this plump face. We're talking about Vance. Um, and in Chinese face reading, the round cheeked person weathers adversity well. So he's a survivor. You know, he's come up through all kinds of, you know, changes, and whatever you think of him, I don't I'm not like inserting what I think of JD Vance. I'm really looking at his face because I can use him as a character. I can use his facial configurations when I want to describe someone. So I'm really looking. So the round cheek person weathered adversity well. Mao had round cheeks. A lot of people do. um, Though a beard conceals the lower half of his round cheeks, maybe to dispel the otherwise baby-faced impression. Yeah, he probably had to show his ID at bars until he was quite far along. He wears eyeliner at times. He's sort of known for that, and bronzer in imitation, probably, of his boss. There's a lot of bronzer going around the White House. Um, there's a look, a perfectly round face, a survivor's face. Life's blows are going to be softened for him. That's what the Chinese believe about the round face. Um, a short, straight nose, able to raise and lower individual eyebrows. You can do it both ways. Very interesting. Silver sideburns, but dark hair. So I'm going to assume that the hair is dyed. The skin tends to shine. Um, for me, it's the eyebrows and the beard, because usually, you know, until in the 20th century, 21st century, no beards on presidents, no beards on politicians. And we're starting to lose that. There's a couple of people in the Trump administration with beards. And So for me, those are front and center. The eyes are well spaced. The nose has a sensitive little tip. Ears close to the head. Face noticeably less round in recent pictures. Whether he's lost weight or has had work done, hard to know. I think um, he's been on a diet or is using Ozempic or something because he has slimmed down considerably. He's one of the few kind of tubby ones in the Trump administration, and obviously is trying to fit into a certain image because Trump really cares about how his people look. Um, that's why they all look like that. um, he The bottom front teeth are visible when he speaks, but not the top teeth. He's and to me, it feels like he's not giving you everything. He's keeping something back. When concentrating, he has two lines between his eyebrows and a look like he's gotten caught and is searching for a plausible excuse. Um, Lips are of even fullness, top and bottom. As an author, he was a shaver. Politician went to the beard, as if to prove he could grow one. Hungry boy. That's my. That's how. When I look at him, that's what I feel. That this is a hungry boy, hungry to qualify for the approval of people who count, hungry for approval, hungry to belong, but concealing it better now. He is dieting and so forth. He's self-creating, but there still is that hungry boy underneath it. Um, so this is using people's appearance, what you've observed becomes a metaphor. So um, when cornered, he's a what about guy, that he instantly deflects um, any direct challenge with a what about this? Um, and so his eyes are very cold. There's a coldness about those blue eyes with the eyeliner um, that I think he could watch you be disemboweled right in front of him and would not give a damn. Uh, he's a survivor. Doesn't mean you're a survivor. Uh, um, he holds his own hand when interviewed. He's like holding his hands and doing something with them. So that's a nervous thing. It's a reassuring himself. Nobody's holding his hand, but he's holding his own hand. This is a survivor. Um, he talks over people who disagree with him. He just talks right over them as if he doesn't even hear them. Um, Goes into a lower than natural register when trying to seem vice presidential, lower than natural level. So that's something you would give to a character easily. Um, uh, he's the good boy who is such a fink. Okay, that's how I'm looking at that face, and that's a good boy who is a fink apple polisher in chief. If I didn't know who he was, and this is a really good exercise if you're going to do politicians, people that we know very well who they are, but it's not observational. So if to stick with observation, you say, like I was saying, how I learned to sort of be a writer was having my mother point people out and go, what about who's that? What does he do for a living? Who's he married to? Et cetera, et cetera. And that was training me to be a writer. So it's a good thing to ask yourself, if I didn't know who he was, uh, so with him, if I didn't know who he was, I'd imagine him to be the branch manager of a bank in the suburbs, glorying in his power, lording it over people who want loans, kissing the asses of powers in town, local developers, etc. Um, that's always the fun stuff for the fiction writer, is to guess who the person. If we didn't know who he was, who would you think he was? So Sarah says, what makes a nose tip sensitive? I've heard that before, but can't picture it. It's when the, for me, this is my own kind of symbol set. Um, when I see somebody who has it's a narrow tip of the nose with a little platform on the end. And usually you don't see it in a short nose. Um, it's like a very sensitive little fingertip almost, the end of the nose. And so, what is a sensitive, if you have a sensitive nose tip, what can we maybe extrapolate from that as a fiction, if you want to use a character like this, is somebody who has feelings hurt easily, someone who, um, sensitive can be good or bad. Some people, when they're hurt, are really mean. And some people, when they're sensitive, they really take it on they quote unquote take it on the chin. They really internalize when they've been hurt. Um, so it's a good some people it's good some people are good as sensitive people, and some people it it makes them worse. Okay, so let's talk about the opposite of Mr. Vance. I have a Pete Hegseth is our next one. Um, and I just find this a very scary face and a very scary physical persona. He's got a broad face, and like Vance, he's got eyebrows pressing hard on those eyes. So that's our impatience and kind of me first sort of attitude. Um, he has a shield shaped face, so he's got a wide face as opposed to the round face. He's got a wide face with petulant little puckers in the corners of the lips, and that is, in the Chinese face reading, the picture is of Muammar Gaddafi with those puckers and there are several people in the Trump administration with these corners of the mouth, these little these little puckers. See? And the little puckers, that's not a good sign. This is the face reading is like corners recede into tiny hollows. The Xiang Min, which is the Chinese face reading, detects immediately that those with this mouth strive to compensate for a lack of self esteem and a feeling of inferiority, through what might appear to an untrained observer as aggressive behavior, impatience, or a supercilious attitude, all indicators of a personality problem. Okay, so we have Muammar Gaddafi over here, and then we have Pete Hegseth. So take a good look at him on your, when we get off, take a look at photos of Pete Hegseth or interviews with him. So lack of self-esteem, compensating for that, compensating for feeling inferior, aggressiveness and impatience, a supercilious attitude. Okay. Then we get deep set brown eyes, lids almost completely hidden on a flattish face. So he's kind of the opposite in certain ways of Vance. He's got a bit like the actor Robert Blake. Those eyes are very similar to Blake's, if you'll take a look at that. And the wide kind of shield shaped face. It's a blocky face. combative chin, clean shaven, long sideburns. Not your father's conservative, those sideburns. It's long, like here. Um, he is the low, broad forehead with sharp creases straight across, reminiscent of a 50s boy heartthrob Wayne Newton, that's me, or a country western singer. But those long sideburns are very interesting in a conservative government. Um, his smile is just from the nose down. Um, Gray curly hair, flattened and combed back. He will sweep his hand through it to show it off. Jaw is clenched and chin pugnacious. It's not a listening face. This is a hard face that dares anyone to get through to him. Those peevish lip corners betray more than do the flat, wide cheeks. He gives off a Kavanaugh vibe, our Supreme Court Justice, threatened and aggressive, but even more assured of his own rightness than Kavanaugh. He always holds his head a bit high, like a horse avoiding the bit. If anybody has ever ridden a horse that holds his head high, so you can't easily guide him. This is Hegseth. Let's see. Glib when speaking, widen smile in false charm. Wears his collar wide, horizontal rather than vertical. You know how the style had been to have a long, big collar, and now, at least among certain Republicans, it's a wide collar, kind of short, with the tie, and bad tempered when questioned. Opens mouth very wide to make a point, like the person who's used to hollering somebody down. Like a little boy hollering, small teeth all in the front. And then I sometimes get like phrases that are repeated. So in his case, it's politically correct, infected with wokeism, hierarchy of toxic masculinity. He looks up to the left when he's speaking, either trying to remember the correct script or making it up. Intelligent but not multidimensional. Um, I put down always be closing. He's got like that sales thing where you got to always be closing. You never go off topic. You never are human. You don't really talk to the other person, get a back and forth. It's like this way, this way, this way. He has a set of tattoos that he's very judicious about showing and not showing. When he takes the shirt off, when he keeps it on, when he wears the long sleeves, he is super tatted. He's like a billboard of his political beliefs. Um, when he's with other he-men, he shows them, but he doesn't show them on Fox News. When he's going out with the Navy SEALs, he's got the shirt on because I think he doesn't want to remind people how extreme he is. His tats are they're big Christian or nationalist tattoos, including an 8-inch Jerusalem cross, which is like a hand like this on his chest. It's a cross with four. Looks like a Russian prison tattoo. Also, Deus Vult, meaning God wills it, on the inside of his bicep, as if he knows what God wills. Really. And other patriotic figures and slogans, like, Deus Vult is like this. He has we the people on the outside of the arm, and then God wills it on the inside of the arm. And he has a flag with an AK-15 as the bottom stripe. So he shows he believes Second Amendment overrules the others. lips have this weird sideways 8, so that goes in the middle and then out again on either side. Um, when he smiles, the teeth are in the straight line in the front, like a crosscut saw almost. Um, like James West in The Wild Wild West, if anybody is an old-fashioned TV watcher. It's supposed to look confident, but it looks like he's gonna bite you. Um, it's interesting, like, what do all these tats do? What kind of impression does that give me? It gives me the impression that he's trying to impress really tough people. He's trying to impress killers and gangsters and, you know, um, very, um, not exactly the average American citizen. He has a very specific audience he's trying to impress with those tats. He talks about the belief in lethality in the armed forces, you know, as if it's the only thing an army does is kill. I mean, we're plenty lethal, but an army, of course, does more than just kill. An army sometimes keeps the peace. Um, so this emphasis on lethality is sort of freaky, um, and you can see it in the physical reality. It's like he has this. It's a fantasy of like being Russian mobster tough, to Teutonic knight, or some crusader. This is obviously a huge fantasy going on there. Um, Members of his unit I believe he was in the Army Reserve, he had a platoon, reported him for extremism, of course, and he waves that like everything else, they're so shameless, he's waving that as a good thing. Um, and if he got into a hot tub that I was in, I would get out as soon as I could. Definitely, to me, civilian woman, I would run if I saw somebody like this with all those tats. Um, if I didn't know who he was with the shirt on, I think inventor of a patented blender he's selling online or some sort of health food line. He's extremely fit. Always be selling and nasty when confronted. So there's a portrait of your new Defense Department head. Here's Marco Rubio, little Marco. And I have all kinds of thoughts about Marco, but this is observation. And then look at my feelings through what I'm seeing. Okay. Um, yes, these are mine. All content is mine. uh, let's see. Here's Marco. Okay. See, one of the few, there's a blonde favoritism towards blondes in Trump's administrations. He likes those blondes. So whenever there's brunettes, it's like, oh, okay, somebody is not dyeing his hair. Okay, good. All right. So we have Marco, Florida senator, becomes the Secretary of State, and got approved pretty easily. Um, so here's a portrait. One of the few dark people on the Trump wagon, like just a brunette. His face is asymmetrical. One heavy lidded eye, and then one that the other's hidden. A bit upsy downsy, meaning kind of his mood is not consistent. He would be changing, kind of moody guy. His expression is melancholic. He's got those, his eyes have heavy lashes that kind of point downward a bit. A little sad in the face. I'm sure that people don't necessarily notice that about him, but when you're really looking at those pictures, you start to see that. Um, He has the peevish corners like Hegseth, the Muammar Gaddafi lips. Um, yeah, so you kind of watch out for that. And he has large ears with a large lobe, which the Chinese face reading likes. They think that's a trait of a survivor. This is this wonderful Chinese secrets of the face, which it's not like I believe or not believe, but it's an interesting system, and it makes you look at a face, details of a face, in a more interesting way. Um, so they are large ears are considered helpful in the Chinese system. So he has that, and it kind of indicates that he's a survivor, which he is. Marco has survived so much. You have to, I don't know if I have to give it to him, as a credit, but just it's a fact. And so those large ears maybe helped him. Johnson had large ears. Um, he is one of the few tree-faced Trump cabineters, which is tree face is a long face. It's a long rectangle face. And in the Chinese system, they believe that tree face people are survivors who don't count on other people coming to their rescue. So Mario doesn't look to other people for help. He is just hangs in and is on the belligerent side, the tree people. Um, don't expect him to return favors or even acknowledge them. He is out for himself. Rubio has an upper lip that he raises asymmetrically, like someone who had some sort of accident or cleft palate surgery as a kid. He seems very clean, like the fussy boy who didn't want to touch sand in the sandbox. Uh, Anybody remember that kid? Um, Teacher's pet. Call on me, call on me. Um, I bet he was teased by other kids, which is some of the sadness, in those that expression. He has a certain tilt of the head when he speaks, like he's admitting something. Well, I gotta say, you got me there. Um, when he exposes his lower teeth when he talks, but not his uppers, like Vance. When he smiles, there's a gap after the front group. So you got your front group, and then there's a gap. Um, so wonder if he has a plate. Thin lips, dark eyes with the hanging lashes, the melancholy eyes, longer face with a sensitive chin. At rest, the mouth goes to a pout. Um, he looks like someone trying desperately to keep his eyes on the street con dealing three-card Monte, determined to figure out which card the coin is under. It's like, whereas of course, the coin isn't under any of the cards. So he's got a bit of that. He's able to be caught by something and not understand what's under it, or that's my take. If I didn't know who he was, I would say vice president of the Rotary Club. His smile is wary. In a disaster, he'd be first out the door. He's the altar boy who thinks on the ones drinking the communion wine. So I think that he and Vance probably have a bit in common. Then there's Pam Bondi, who is our new attorney general. I don't know if she's been approved yet, but she's, we'll see. This is a Trump woman with the dyed blonde hair. So, she's a brunette who is a Trump blonde. 60, mobile mouth, pearl earrings, squared off prominent chin, and stubbornness is that prominent chin. Flat cheeks and a double layer of false eyelashes on dark eyes and arched dark eyebrows, short round nose. So, um, A rather plain woman who learned to work with what she had, highly polished, blonde in step with the Trump Fox scene. She wrinkles her nose when she smiles, must have learned it as a girl to show humor when she doesn't have it. Like, like she smiles like this, um, which is her smile has an implied sneer. Very large white teeth stay within the lips when she smiles. Challenging eyes, even in a smile, like taking names. Enough of a lawyer to respond to questions about who won the 2020 election to say Joe Biden is president without saying he won. Uh, sure of herself, bleached teeth, very clear enunciation, hitting the crisp consonants. She says, yes, sir. She's from Florida, so she has a bit of that Southern manner. Used to sport a large jewelry cross, a large one like this, uh, but it's nowhere in evidence during her confirmation hearing. Um, if I worked at a nail salon, I'd do anything not to have to work on her. If I didn't know who she was, I would guess a really pushy realtor or agent. Um, And Sarah says irony being that her last name literally means blonde. Yeah. Um, then there's Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Oh, Rubio. That's interesting because he's one of the few dark. I mean, he's a brunette in the Trump administration. Oh, see, diversity. Then we have Robert Kennedy. Okay, here's his portrait. The asymmetrical face is what you notice first. One ear completely swiveled outwards like a Disney character, one eye higher than the other. Chinese face reading feels these are signs of an unbalanced person with a tendency to mood swings. Um, Kennedy is lean, in his 70s, with very light blue eyes, silver hair with receding corners. The tan skin is thin, the nose sharply creased. Smile comes quickly, can also move into a sneer. Um, Square lobed chin, the real uh, two-part chin. Extremely fit and poses shirt off more often than the average 70-year-old politician. So there's a vanity and Hexeth too, you know. They have to show it off. They can't just be in shape. Um, very vain, I would think, like Hexeth. Wears hearing aid. Looks a bit like Tom Hanks' obsessive older brother. Seems in some photos you see white above the iris, so that's called three white eye, where I can't even do it, but there's most of us have two whites, one on either side. Three white is kind of this, it's a bit intense. And he has the white that's over the eye. Often we see people who have that kind of people sort of think it's sexy to have the lower white eye down here, but it can be a sign of ill health as well in the Chinese face reading. But the one above the eye is kind of wild looking. Um, and he can certainly have that. Um, he three white eye seems overly forceful. If not in politics, I would say he was involved in a cult. If he were a junior high teacher, he'd be one of the kids that he'd be the one the kids could get talking about something entirely unrelated. They'd know his obsessions and get him to blow the whole period talking about alien astronauts or the invention of the theremin. Perhaps a shortwave enthusiast or has an orgone box in his backyard. So Jill says RFK's tan to her seems more like the redness of an alcoholic. Um, So I could see absolutely using him as a character. Um, so I'm just saying, you can use people in the news to, and then distill their characteristics and then use them for characters who might seem to have some of their traits. So here's another one. Here's Tulsi Gabbard. Was this my last one? I think so. Tulsi Gabbard. I did Cash Patel, but I didn't print him out. So here's Tulsi. Tulsi Gabbard, Samoan and Anglo descent, a 45-year-old brunette, a second dark horse after Marco on the Trump wagon. Attractive, a streak of gray in the dark hair, smooth, even, dark eyebrows, which Chinese face reading thinks are fortunate. Eyes are long rather than round. Square jaw, but sharp chin. So she has the square jaw like this, but the chin is sharp. Um, uh, Smiles with teeth tucked into lower lip. But when she has a full smile, she has small, even teeth and a lot of gum, which is very, I mean, that's a telling facial characteristic, I think, of her, because everything else is very smooth, very middle of the road, balanced. And then that's the detail that sets her apart. So if I was writing a character, I might give her that mouth. It's a very interesting mouth. She pronounced vertical, stretchy laugh lines in the cheek because she's the opposite of a Vance. She doesn't have that fat face. She has a very lean face. So when she smiles, there's a lot of creases here. Um, she has laugh lines under her eyes, hoop earrings in conservative settings. So it's kind of comfortable looking. Um, she has a slight bump in her nose and hidden nostrils. So hidden nostrils, when you see the face straight on, um, in the Chinese system, it means you don't see the nose holes. See, some people have this, and you see the nostrils, and some have hidden. And in the Chinese system, the nose is about money, and the hidden nostril means that they don't, the money doesn't flow out of them. The more you can see from the front, the more likely the person spends freely. Uh, um, and I'm not saying I believe it or not believe in it. This is just, an interesting system and a way to notice. Would I have noticed whether somebody had hidden nostrils or not if I hadn't read the book? Um, uh, she she has a less makeup than the average Republican woman um, in politics in Washington. High bridge to the nose with kind of a strange continuation up the forehead. So it's like this. There's like the bone is sharp and it continues up into the forehead, not like a Romulan or something, but it's definitely an interesting configuration, very narrow, and continues the bridge of the nose up. Garbo had this. And it indicates, but for the Chinese face reading, it indicates somebody who doesn't mind their own solitude, which is interesting. Not somebody who normally goes into politics. Well-spaced eyebrow above the eye. It's not that Hegseth Vance pressing on the eye thing. The jackets are buttoned high under the breasts. She dresses like a petite, though she's a 5'8", which is kind of interesting. It's like the girlishness. She hasn't completely abandoned that. She's very fit, and her nails are unpolished, short and unpolished. So that's another thing in which she diverges from a lot of the Trump world. So it's like the hands, it's like the hands of somebody who's ready to work. Uses hands in a preacherish way when speaking, like this, this. Um, Rough facial skin. She's got she she had bad skin as a youngster. It's I assume that she gets it treated and makeup and blah blah blah. But in some shots you can see that she had bad skin as a kid, and um, which means that a rough adolescence. Something interesting about her. Also, hairy inside corners of the eyebrows. When you can see the skin and the hairs stick up. Um, People do pluck them, but if you have the hairs that stick up, it means in the Chinese system that is uh, stands for uncooperative siblings. Isn't that interesting? um, let's see. I get the feel of a confident person who has not distorted herself a great deal to please the standard. Um, Seems peppy. That visible gum smile with the small teeth shows a vulnerability. Um, Small mouth, the rough skin. If I didn't know who she was, I'd imagine someone in donor development at a university, somebody who goes out and uh, finds big donors for the university. She has that kind of a look about her. So anyway, I just wanted to show you a way of using people who are often on the news as subjects to observe, and then you've got them and you can use them in your own writing whenever you want. Give them to characters, give them traits like that. Um, and another book, so I highly recommend this book. I'm not telling you to believe, that people with a certain mouth are a certain way or something like that. We don't want to prejudge people like that, but it's very interesting. It's a very interesting system. And her name is Leylan Young. And there she is. And it's called Secrets of the Face, and you can see I've had it since my daughter was writing in my books. Coloring on. And it was published in 1984. Another book I want to recommend to you is this book, Man Watching, A Field Guide to Human Behavior by Desmond Morris. And he's just watching human behavior like you'd watch animal behavior and making some observations. And this is so useful when you are writing a character and you're looking for gestures. Last week we talked about body crossing, that as a protective gesture, how the queen will check her purse. Body crossing, check your purse or check your watch. It's a way of of a protective gesture, but it is so much, when you need to give your character to show they're nervous without saying it. You can have somebody, nervously check their purse or nervously check their watch. It's called barrier signals, and there's 3 of them. Here's somebody checking their cuff. I don't know who that was. Probably some politician. It was, I don't know. And then Grace Kelly. Celebrities do it just because they're assaulted by people all the time. So they check the purse, they check the cuff. This is just you cannot, every writer should have this book in their bag of tricks. the different just gestures, because we forget to look at gestures. Um, but it brings the person physically to life, and that's what we've been talking about, is bringing the person physically to life. So this is Man Watching by Desmond Morris, and it was 1977, and really, really useful in describing things, remotivating actions. So, this girl might have been losing interest in the guy, so he feeds her. It's like, oh, pay attention to me, pay attention to me, and the different ways that that happens. You can use this stuff all day long. So, anyway, I thank you for joining me for Writing Wednesday, and I hope to see you next week. I think I'm going to continue doing it on YouTube. So thank you and good writing. Okay, bye. Let's see, how does this end? End stream. There